A poor black child from a trailer park thinks she can heal a federal judge? Judge Douglas Sterling stared down from his wheelchair at 10-year-old Justice Morgan in her duct-taped sneakers. Security, remove her. Justice didn't move. Your Honor, you're in pain right now. Lower back, right side. Started 15 minutes ago. Sterling froze. She was exactly right. I can stop that pain in 3 minutes, and in 12 more I can make you feel your legs again. The courtroom erupted, but Sterling felt it, a tingle in his right toe. Impossible, but real. Justice locked eyes with him. Free my dad, and I'll heal you. Right here, right now. 60 seconds to decide. Behind her, Christopher Morgan sat in handcuffs. 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. 3 cameras rolling. Sterling gripped his wheelchair. You have 3 minutes. 45 minutes later, he would stand up in front of 200 people. Let me back up. Justice Morgan lived in an 8-by-20-foot trailer in Oak Grove, Mobile Park. 4th grade at Riverside Elementary. Her school clothes came from the donation box at church. Her sneakers used to belong to a cousin 3 years older. The sole on the left one flapped when she walked. Her grandmother Ruth was 72, hands like leather. 60 years of what people called bone setting. No medical degree, no license. Just 12 people in Oak Grove who could walk again because Ruth Morgan knew how to read a body the way most people read a book. Justice had been learning since she was 6 years old. How to place your hands on a spine and feel which vertebra sat crooked. How to find the knots in muscle tissue that pulled bones out of alignment. How to tell the difference between pain that needed a hospital and pain that needed patience. Her mother Maya had been a nurse at Mercy General Hospital. Maya used to say justice would be the bridge between 2 worlds, traditional knowledge and modern medicine, hands and science. Maya died when Justice was 8. Breast cancer, stage 4. By the time they found it, it was too late. And even if they'd found it early, there wasn't money for treatment, not on a nurse's salary, not with a husband who just lost his job. That was 2 years ago. Judge Sterling lived in a 4,000-square-foot house on Riverside Hill, 18 years on the bench. Before the accident, he'd played tennis twice a week and hiked every Sunday morning. 3 years ago, a climbing rope failed. He fell 30 feet, fractured his T12 and L1 vertebrae, paralyzed from the waist down. He'd tried everything. 2 surgeries, stem cell therapy in Mexico, physical therapy 5 days a week for 18 months, acupuncture, experimental drugs from Germany, $340,000. Nothing worked. Now he was running for appellate judge. Election in 6 months. He needed to look strong, decisive, tough on crime. His approval rating sat at 52%. Not enough to win. He needed a showcase case, something that would play well in the news. Christopher Morgan's case was perfect. The charge was involuntary manslaughter through medical negligence. Christopher worked as an X-ray technician at Mercy General. A patient named George Hamilton came in with chest pain. Christopher took the X-rays. He saw something unusual in the right lung. A shadow. 2.3 centimeters. He told the radiologist, Dr. Stephen Phillips. Phillips said it was artifact from the ribs, told Christopher not to note it in his report. 8 months later, George Hamilton died of lung cancer. The tumor had been there all along, right there on the X-ray. Missed. The family sued for $2.3 million. The hospital settled for $1.8 million. And then the district attorney charged Christopher Morgan with negligence that led to a death. Christopher made $48,000 a year, doctor. Phillips made $320,000. Guess who became the scapegoat? Christopher's public defender said take a deal. Plead guilty, get 5 years, maybe out in 3 with good behavior. Christopher said no. I didn't make a mistake. I reported what I saw. Nobody listened. So they went to trial. The jury came back guilty. And now, today, Judge Sterling was supposed to sentence him. The recommendation was 20 years. Justice knew what 20 years meant. It meant she'd be 30 when her father got out. It meant she'd go through middle school, high school, college, and maybe even have kids before she saw him again. It meant her father would miss her entire life. Two worlds that never touched. An 8x20 trailer and a 4,000-square-foot house. A girl who learned medicine from her grandmother's hands, and a judge who only trusted what came with a medical degree. But today, those worlds were about to collide. Because Justice had 32 minutes to do something no doctor could do in 3 years, and the man who held her father's life didn't believe she could. Camera 1 belonged to KRSV News. 35,000 subscribers on YouTube watching live. Camera 2 was Court TV Local. Camera 3 was Rachel Stone, a legal blogger with 18,000 Twitter followers filming on her phone. And Sarah Williams from Channel 8 was live streaming on Facebook. 2,100 people watching. The number kept climbing. 200 people in the courtroom gallery. 40% wanted Christopher Morgan freed. Thought the whole thing was a setup. The other 60% wanted justice for George Hamilton's family. Wanted someone to pay for a man who died too young. Patricia Davis, the bailiff, stood by the side door with her phone pressed to her ear. EMS dispatch said they were stuck in traffic. 14 minutes out now, maybe 12 if they got lucky. Alan Brooks, Christopher's public defender, was on his feet, hands shaking. He didn't know what to say. This wasn't in any law book he'd ever read. A defendant's daughter offering to heal the judge in exchange for her father's freedom. It sounded like a fairy tale. Or a con. Justice's hands were shaking too. She could feel 200 pairs of eyes on her back, 3 cameras pointing at her face, 1 microphone picking up every word. In her head, her grandmother's voice. "Justice, baby, you got special hands. Run 3 degrees hotter than mine. You feel things I can't feel. Don't be afraid of that." In her heart, her mother's voice. "You're going to be the bridge, sweetheart, between what we know and what they know. Don't let anyone tell you one is better than the other." But right now, Justice was just scared. Because Grandma Ruth had taught her how to help people with back pain. With broken bones that didn't heal right. With joints that locked up from old injuries. She'd never treated a spinal cord injury, never touched someone who'd been paralyzed for 3 years. What if she failed? What if she tried and nothing happened? Then everyone in this room would watch her father get sentenced to 20 years, and it would be her fault for giving him hope. Judge Sterling was thinking too. His heart rate was 115. He could feel it pounding in his ears. The muscle spasms had started 15 minutes ago. Pain shooting up from his lower back into his ribs. He'd had episodes like this before. Usually he could breathe through them, take his medication, wait it out. But not today. Not in front of 200 people and 3 cameras. If he left the courtroom, the case would go to Judge Martha Taylor. Taylor was soft. She'd probably reduce Christopher Morgan's sentence to 10 years, maybe 8. Sterling couldn't let that happen. This case was his ticket to the appellate court. He needed to be the one to sentence Morgan. Needed to be on that bench, looking strong and decisive when he handed down 20 years. But God, the pain. A woman in the gallery shouted, "Don't let that child touch you, Your Honor. It's voodoo." Another voice, "Give her a chance. What do you have to lose?" Patricia Davis whispered to Sterling. "Sir, EMS is 12 minutes out. If you need help now, I can clear the courtroom." Sterling looked at Justice, really looked at her. 10 years old. Wearing a white t-shirt that had been washed so many times you could almost see through it, jeans with 2 patches on the knees, sneakers held together with duct tape. She looked terrified, but she hadn't run. She was standing there, waiting, offering him something nobody else could give, relief, hope, maybe healing. He thought about the campaign, about the cameras. If he refused, the headlines would read, "Judge too proud to accept help from child." If he accepted and she failed, they'd read, "Judge falls for faith healing scam." But if she succeeded... Sterling closed his eyes. Breathed in. 4 counts. Out. 6 counts. The pain was at a 9 out of 10 now. He opened his eyes. You have 3 minutes. If nothing changes, security will escort you out. In the end, it wasn't compassion that made Sterling say yes. It was pride. And 12 minutes until EMS arrived. Justice took off her shoes. Her grandmother always said bare feet connect you to the earth. The earth helps you channel energy, helps you feel where the blocks are, helps you know when you're pushing too hard or not hard enough. The courtroom floor was cold tile. Justice walked up the 3 steps to the judge's bench. Sterling had lowered his wheelchair to its lowest position. She was almost at eye level with him now. "May I touch your back, Your Honor?" He nodded. She placed her hands on his shoulders first, just resting there, feeling the temperature of his skin through his robe, feeling the tension in his muscles, counting his breaths. Then she moved her hands down, one hand on each side of his spine, starting at his neck, T1, T2, T3, counting down. Her fingers pressed gently into the spaces between vertebrae, reading them like Braille. At T12, she stopped. "This one," she said. "It's rotated 4 degrees to the left." Sterling's eyes went wide. "How do you—" "The calcification is pulling your right hip down, makes your right leg 1.2 centimeters shorter. That's why you always lean left in your chair." Patricia Davis pulled out an infrared thermometer. She was skeptical but curious. She pointed it at Justice's hand. The reading came back 99.2 degrees Fahrenheit, warmer than normal. Justice kept her hands on Sterling's back. "Your Honor, there's a nerve trapped between T12 and L1. That's what's causing your pain right now. The muscle around it is in spasm trying to protect the nerve. I need to release the muscle first. It's going to hurt for about 20 seconds. Then it'll feel better." "Do it," Sterling said through gritted teeth. Justice found the spot. Right side of his spine, about 2 inches from the center. She pressed with her thumbs. 4 pounds of pressure. Not enough to damage anything, but enough to sink into the muscle. She moved her thumbs in small circles. Cross-fiber friction. 60 strokes in the same spot. Sterling gasped. I know. Keep breathing. In through your nose. 4 counts. Out through your mouth. 6 counts." He did, breathing with her rhythm. And slowly, very slowly, the muscles started to release. The room was completely silent. 200 people watching a 10-year-old do what 8 doctors couldn't figure out how to do. After 3 minutes and 20 seconds, Justice stepped back. Sterling's face had changed. The gray was gone. His breathing was easier. The sweat on his forehead was drying. "The pain," he said. "It's better. It's down to maybe a 6. "I know," Justice said. "But you're not healed yet, Your Honor. The nerve is still compressed. The scar tissue from your surgeries is pulling on it. I need 5 more minutes." And that's when Sterling felt it. A tingle. Not pain. Not numbness. A tingle. In his right big toe. A sensation he hadn't felt in 3 years. Like pins and needles when your foot falls asleep. Except his foot hadn't been asleep. His foot had been dead. Or so every doctor had told him. But now something was happening. Some signal was getting through. From his brain, down his spinal cord, through whatever pathway Justice's hands had opened, all the way to his toe. He didn't say anything. Didn't want to jinx it. Didn't want to hope too much. But his breath caught in his throat, and Justice heard it. "You felt something, didn't you?" she asked. "My toe," he whispered. "My right big toe. It's tingling." Justice smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one. The kind that says "I told you so" without saying it out loud. "That's good, Your Honor. That means the nerve is waking up. But it's been asleep for 3 years. We need to be gentle with it, like helping someone wake up from a long sleep." Can I keep going?" Sterling nodded. He couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Behind him, Alan Brooks was frozen, his hand still holding the pen he'd been using to take notes. The pen wasn't moving. He was just staring. In the gallery, 40 people had stood up to see better. Camera 1 had zoomed in on Justice's hands. Rachel Stone was typing frantically on her phone. "Holy shit, his toe just moved! I saw it! I saw it!" But she was wrong. His toe hadn't moved yet. Not yet. But Justice wasn't done. She'd released the acute spasm. She'd given him some relief. But that wasn't healing. That was just pain management. Real healing meant addressing the root cause, the scar tissue from 2 surgeries that had created adhesions around his spinal cord, the nerve compression that had convinced every doctor he'd never walk again. She needed 12 more minutes. She needed him to trust her completely, and she needed everyone in this room to be quiet so she could work. "Your Honor," Justice said, "I need you to trust me for what comes next." Sterling felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Not hope, not yet. Just a tingle in his right big toe. "Where did you learn this?" Sterling asked. His voice was different now, quieter. Less like a judge and more like a man who just discovered something impossible might be possible. Justice wiped her hands on her jeans. "My grandma, Ruth Morgan. She learned from her mother, and her mother learned from her mother. 4 generations, Your Honor. We've been healing people in Oak Grove for 60 years. 4 generations, Sterling repeated. But you're only 10. My mom taught me too, before she died. Justice's voice got smaller. Her name was Maya Morgan. She was a nurse. She was at Mercy General Hospital. Same hospital where my dad works. Sterling went very still. Maya Morgan. The name landed in his memory like a stone dropping into water. Ripples spreading out. A face forming in his mind. A young nurse with kind eyes and her hair in long braids. 3 years ago, right after his first surgery. She'd been assigned to his recovery room. He remembered now. Through the fog of pain medication and despair. She'd come into his room one evening, sat down in the chair next to his bed, told him about her mother's work in the community, traditional healing practices that had been passed down through generations. She'd offered to have her mother come visit, to try some techniques that might help with the nerve pain. He'd said no. He'd been polite about it, but firm. He didn't believe in that kind of medicine. He trusted science, trusted doctors, trusted what came with clinical trials and peer-reviewed studies. Maya had smiled. That's okay, Your Honor. I understand. But if you change your mind, we're here. 2 weeks later, she rotated to a different unit. He never saw her again. Your mother, Sterling said slowly. Maya. She took care of me. After my first surgery. Justice nodded. She wrote about you in her journal. She wrote about a lot of her patients, especially the ones she thought she could help if they'd just let her try. What did she write about me? She said you had a strong will, but that your body was fighting itself. She said the scar tissue was the enemy, not the spine. She wanted to help you. Sterling closed his eyes. He could see Maya's face so clearly now, the way she'd looked at him with compassion but no pity, the way she'd believed in something he couldn't accept. Where is she now? Your mother? She died 2 years ago. Breast cancer. We couldn't afford treatment. The words hit Sterling like a fist. This woman who'd wanted to help him, who'd offered her family's knowledge freely, she died because she couldn't afford the very medical system he'd trusted above all else. And now her daughter stood in front of him. 10 years old. Offering to finish what her mother had started. Sterling closed his eyes. Maya's daughter. The nurse who tried to help him. And he'd refused. Now her child was the only one who could. All right, Sterling said. His voice was steady now, decided. What do you need? I need you to trust me completely for the next 12 minutes, Justice said. And I need everyone to be quiet. Patricia Davis made an announcement. Please, everyone, silence in the courtroom. Then she checked her phone. EMS is 6 minutes out. We have 21 minutes until sentencing deadline. Justice asked for 3 things: a warm towel from the break room, a bottle of water for the judge to drink, and someone to help hold his legs steady while she worked. Alan Brooks stepped forward. I'll help. Sterling lowered his wheelchair all the way down and leaned to his right side. Justice placed the warm towel across his lower back. Gave him the water bottle. Drink half of it. Your muscles need to be hydrated for this to work. Then she began phase 2. Her grandmother had taught her 3 levels of technique. Level 1 was what she'd just done. Acute pain relief. Surface work. It helped immediately but didn't fix the underlying problem. Level 2 was deeper. It went after the adhesions, the scar tissue that formed after surgery and trauma, the stuff that wrapped around nerves and blood vessels like spider webs, pulling everything out of alignment, choking off signals between the brain and body. This was going to hurt. Your Honor, I'm going to work on the scar tissue now. 3 sections. Each one is about 6 inches long, right where they cut you open for surgery. I need to break up the adhesions. It's going to feel like deep pressure, maybe 5 out of 10 on pain. But it's good pain. It means the tissue is releasing, okay? Sterling nodded. Do what you need to do. Justice positioned her fingers along the first section of scar tissue. She could feel it under her hands, thick, ropey, pulling the skin and muscle into unnatural patterns. She used a technique called cross-fiber friction, pressing her fingers perpendicular to the scar fibers, moving in short strokes, 60 strokes per section, 4 to 5 pounds of pressure. Sterling's jaw clenched. That's intense. I know. Keep breathing. Count with me. In for 4, out for 6. After 5 minutes, the first 2 sections of scar tissue had softened. Justice could feel the difference. The tissue had more give, more elasticity. It was releasing its grip on the structures underneath. Now came the nerve work. Mr. Brooks, I need you to hold Judge Sterling's right leg. I'm going to lift it and straighten it. We're going to do something called nerve flossing. It helps the sciatic nerve remember how to glide through the tissue. 20 repetitions. Slow. 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down. Alan held Sterling's ankle. Justice lifted the leg straight, then bent it at the knee to 90 degrees. Straight. Bent. Straight. Bent. Very slowly, like a physical therapist would do, but with her hands positioned on specific points along the nerve pathway. At repetition 12, Sterling shouted, I felt that! In my calf! Electric! Like lightning! The courtroom gasped. 40 people stood up to see better. Camera 1 zoomed in on Sterling's leg. Rachel Stone was typing on her phone so fast her thumbs blurred. His calf just twitched. I saw it. Holy shit. But Justice stayed focused. 8 more repetitions. Breathing with Sterling, keeping the movement slow and controlled. When she finished, she placed one hand on his sacrum and the other on his T10 vertebra. This was the final step. Spinal traction. Gentle decompression. Like creating space between vertebrae that had been compressed for 3 years. She pulled. Not hard. Maybe 8 to 10 pounds of force. Just enough to lengthen his spine by a few millimeters. She held the position for 45 seconds. Sterling heard 3 small pops, like knuckles cracking, but deep inside his back. The sound of vertebrae realigning, finding their proper spacing. And then Justice said the words that changed everything. Your Honor, I need you to try something. Don't force it. Don't push. Just think about moving your right foot. Imagine the signal going from your brain down your spine into your leg. Imagine your toe moving. Just think it. Sterling closed his eyes, concentrated. 10 seconds. 15. 20. And then, his right big toe moved. 2 millimeters. Maybe less. Just a tiny shift. The smallest wiggle. But it moved. Alan Brooks saw it. He was holding Sterling's ankle, and he felt the muscles contract. Oh my God, it moved. His toe moved. His toe. Sterling opened his eyes, looked down at his foot, tried again, thought about moving his toe, and it moved. A little more this time. Maybe 3 millimeters. Tears started running down his face. He wasn't sobbing, wasn't making any sound, but tears ran down his cheeks and dripped onto his robe because after 3 years of being told he'd never move his legs again, his toe had just moved. 200 people stood up, the entire gallery on their feet. Some were crying, some were praying, some were just staring in disbelief. Rachel Stone's tweet went out to 18,000 followers. Holy shit, Judge Sterling's toe just moved. I watched it happen. Riverside courtroom. Sarah Williams's Facebook live stream had 6,800 people watching now, 340 comments per minute. The video was being shared in real time across the state. But justice wasn't done. She looked at Sterling's face, saw the tears, saw the hope and the fear and the disbelief all mixed together, and she said something her mother used to say. Your Honor, it's not impossible. It's just forgotten. Your body remembers how to move. We just had to remind it. Sterling couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. All he could do was nod. And then the courtroom doors opened. 2 paramedics walked in with a stretcher. They'd been called for a medical emergency. They were here to transport Judge Sterling to the hospital. Sterling looked at them, then at Justice, then back at the paramedics. Stop, he said. I don't need you. The lead paramedic was confused. Sir, we got a call that you were in acute distress. The emergency is over. Sterling's voice was getting stronger. This child just did what your entire profession couldn't do for 3 years. I'm not going anywhere. We have a sentencing to finish. The paramedics looked at each other, looked at Patricia Davis. She shrugged. Judge's call. They left. The doors closed behind them. Sterling looked at Justice, then at the courtroom, then at his right foot, the foot that had just moved, the toe that had just wiggled, and he said 5 words that changed everything. I need to see the evidence. Sterling looked at Justice, then at the courtroom, then at his right foot, and he said 5 words that changed everything. I need to see the evidence. Bailiff, Sterling said, his voice carrying a new authority. Bring me the case files, all of them. Rebecca Walsh stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Your Honor, the trial is over. The jury has already deliberated. You're here to sentence, not to retry the case. I'm here to ensure justice, Ms. Walsh. Bring me the X-ray evidence. Patricia Davis retrieved 3 folders from the court clerk. Case file number 2024, CR 3891, 14 X-ray images, 230 pages of testimony transcripts. She carried them to Sterling's wheelchair and placed them on the portable desk attachment. 16 minutes until the sentencing deadline. Sterling pulled up the X-ray images on the courtroom's large display screen. The same screen they'd used during the trial to show evidence to the jury. Now everyone in the gallery could see them. George Hamilton's chest X-ray, taken 9 months before he died. Justice stepped closer. She'd watched her mother read X-rays hundreds of times. Maya used to bring them home, study them at the kitchen table, teach Justice what to look for. Your Honor, I'm not a doctor, but my mom taught me to read X-rays. She said it's like reading bones, like reading a story in shadows. She pointed to a spot on the right lung, upper lobe. That shadow there. It's 2.3 centimeters. That's not a normal rib shadow. Ribs are linear. They cast long shadows. That shadow is round, contained. That's soft tissue. Sterling compared it to the radiologist report, signed by Dr. Stephen Phillips. The report stated, rib fracture visible on right anterolateral aspect, ribs 4 to 6. No complications. Follow up in 6 weeks if pain persists. No mention of any mass in the lung. Sterling pulled up Christopher Morgan's testimony from the trial transcript, read it aloud. I saw something unusual in the lung field. I told Dr. Phillips. He said it was artifact from the rib fracture. He told me not to note it in my report. He said it would confuse the attending physician. Sterling looked at the courtroom. Who was the attending physician? Patricia Davis checked the records. Dr. Ellen Bradford. And Dr. Bradford never saw Christopher's concern because Dr. Phillips told him not to document it. Rebecca Walsh's face had gone pale. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. You cannot review evidence during sentencing. Ms. Walsh, a man's daughter just gave me back my toe. I think irregular is exactly what we need today. The victim's family is here. Walsh gestured to 4 people sitting in the front row. They deserve closure. Mr. Morgan's negligence, or Dr. Phillips' negligence. Sterling leaned forward. Let me ask you something, Ms. Walsh. Why would a radiologist tell a technician not to document something unusual? Because if it's not documented, there's no paper trail. If there's no paper trail, there's no liability. Justice's voice was small, but clear. Why would Dr. Phillips do that? Sterling was connecting dots now, the kind of dots that had been sitting in front of everyone but nobody had wanted to connect. George Hamilton died 8 months after that X-ray. His family sued for $2.3 million. Mercy General Hospital settled for $1.8 million. The hospital's insurance covered most of it. But hospitals don't like lawsuits, even when insurance covers the costs. Lawsuits raise premiums, damage reputations, scare away patients. So when the family pushed for criminal charges, the hospital needed someone to blame. A radiologist making $320,000 a year. Too valuable, too connected, too many important patients who specifically requested him. An X-ray technician making $48,000 a year? Expendable. Sterling looked at Rebecca Walsh. Ms. Walsh, who contributed to your campaign last year? Walsh's face went from pale to white. That's irrelevant to this case. Mercy General Hospital donated $25,000 to your re-election campaign. Public record. California Secretary of State website. Anyone can look it up. The courtroom exploded. 200 people started talking at once. Camera 3 zoomed in on Walsh's face. The live stream viewer count hit 11,000. Thomas Reed, the attorney for Hamilton's family, stood up. Your Honor, we request a recess. Sterling hit his gavel 3 times, hard. This court is not recessing. Mr. Reed, sit down. And he looked at Justice. Your father didn't make a mistake. He tried to prevent one. Justice nodded. She'd known for 3 years. Known her father was innocent. Known nobody would believe her. Until now. Sterling had spent 3 years in a wheelchair. Christopher Morgan had spent 3 years in a cell. Both were innocent. Both were betrayed by the same system. Sterling hit the gavel 3 times. Order! Order! The courtroom fell silent. I'm calling a 30-day continuance to review the evidence in this case. Rebecca Walsh shot to her feet. Your Honor, you cannot... I just did. Sterling's voice was steel. Christopher Morgan will remain free on bail pending an evidentiary review. This court is adjourned for 30 days. This is unprecedented. So is a 10-year-old healing a paralyzed judge, Counselor. We're in unprecedented territory. I suggest you get used to it. Sterling looked at the bailiff. Mr. Morgan, approach the bench. Christopher Morgan stood up from the defendant's table. He was 38 but looked 50. Gaunt. 3 months of pre-sentencing detention had left him 20 pounds lighter. His beard had grown long. His prison jumpsuit was orange and oversized. He walked forward slowly, hands still cuffed in front of him, not quite believing what he'd just heard. "Your Honor?" "Bailiff, remove those restraints." Patricia Davis hesitated. "Sir, protocol requires—" "Remove them." She did. The handcuffs came off. Christopher stared at his wrists, at the red marks from the metal, at his hands, free for the first time in 3 months. Sterling's voice softened. "Mr. Morgan, you tried to do the right thing. You tried to save a man's life by reporting what you saw. Nobody listened to you. And I didn't listen to your daughter. I should have. I'm sorry." Christopher's voice broke. "Your Honor, I don't—" "Go hug your daughter." Justice ran. She ran up the 3 steps to the bench and crashed into her father's arms. He caught her and held her, and they both started crying. Not quiet tears. Loud, ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs. The kind you cry when something you thought was lost forever suddenly comes back. 120 people in the gallery started clapping. The other 80 sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. But Sterling wasn't done. "I'm also ordering an independent investigation into the radiology department at Mercy General Hospital. Special focus. All cases reviewed by Dr. Stephen Phillips in the last 5 years. And I'm requesting that the State Medical Board review Dr. Phillips's license." Patricia Davis wrote down every word. Official court record. Rebecca Walsh sat down. Her hands were shaking. Her political career was over, and she knew it. Sterling turned to Justice. She was still holding her father, her face buried in his chest, but she was listening. "Ms. Morgan, what you did today. 8 doctors couldn't do that in 3 years. I don't know what to call what you do. It's not Western medicine. It's not Eastern medicine. It's just human medicine. The kind that sees people instead of problems. The kind that listens instead of dismissing." Justice looked up at him. Her face was wet with tears. "I'm writing a letter to Riverside Community College. You'll have a full scholarship waiting for you when you turn 18. Full tuition, $5,000 a year for living expenses. If you want to study medicine, nursing, physical therapy, whatever you choose, it's yours." Justice didn't fully understand what that meant. She was 10. 18 was a lifetime away. But she understood that this man was opening a door that had been locked her entire life. "And I'm writing another letter to the state legislature, recommending a pilot program to study traditional healing practices in underserved communities. $2.5 million in funding. Because people like your grandmother, people like your mother, they have knowledge we've been ignoring, and that needs to change." He paused. "Now, there's one more thing." The courtroom was completely silent. Everyone thought the big moment had passed. Justice had healed the judge. Christopher was free. What else could there be? Sterling placed both hands on the armrests of his wheelchair. Justice understood immediately. She stepped close to him, whispered so only he could hear. "You can do it. Your body remembers." Sterling took a breath. In for 4 counts. Out for 6. The breathing technique Justice had taught him. He pushed down on the armrests. His arms shook. His shoulders tensed. For 3 years, his upper body had been compensating for his paralyzed lower body. His arms were strong, but standing required more than arm strength. It required legs, muscles that hadn't fired in 3 years, neural pathways that had been dark. But Justice had opened something, some signal, some connection. His right leg tensed first, the quadriceps contracted, the knee straightened, then his left leg, and Judge Douglas Sterling stood up. He stood for 8 seconds, his knees shaking, his legs trembling like a newborn deer. his left hand still gripping the armrest for balance. But he was standing, upright, on his own 2 feet. 200 people rose to their feet, not to see better, to honor what they were witnessing. A standing ovation for a man who was standing for the first time in 3 years. Camera 1, Camera 2, Camera 3 all captured the moment. Rachel Stone's fingers flew across her phone. "I just watched a miracle." Judge Sterling stood up. 8 seconds. I counted. Riverside Courtroom, House Justice Morgan. The Facebook live stream hit 18,500 viewers. The video was being shared 920 times per minute. By evening, it would have 4 million views. By the next morning, 8.6 million on TikTok. But in that moment, Justice wasn't thinking about any of that. She was watching Judge Sterling, watching him shake, watching him fight to stay upright just a few seconds longer, watching him prove to himself and everyone else that impossible things can happen, that people can change, that healing is real. After 8 seconds, Sterling sat back down. His legs gave out, but he was smiling. Actually, smiling. A real smile, not a judge smile. A human smile. A man in the back of the gallery shouted, "Thank you, little girl! Thank you!" Justice turned around, saw 200 faces looking at her, some crying, some smiling, some still processing. And she realized something. This wasn't just about her father. This wasn't just about Judge Sterling. This was about everyone in this room who'd ever been told they couldn't do something. Everyone who'd been dismissed. Everyone who'd been called too small, too young, too poor, too uneducated to matter. Sterling's voice was soft but steady. 3 years ago, your mother tried to help me. I said no. I told her I didn't believe in that kind of medicine. She smiled and said, "That's okay, Your Honor. One day, you will." She was right. I just wish she were here to see this. Justice's voice was barely a whisper. "She is, Your Honor. She's always been here." It took 3 years for Sterling to stand. It took 3 hours for Justice to change his mind. It took 3 seconds for 200 people to believe in something bigger than themselves. 6 weeks later, all charges against Christopher Morgan were dropped. The independent investigation revealed that Dr. Stephen Phillips had misread 6 other X-rays over the previous 2 years. 3 patients had received delayed diagnoses because of his errors. 1 had died. The state medical board suspended Phillips's license for 2 years. He faced 3 civil lawsuits from families, 500 hours of mandatory retraining before he could practice again. His career was effectively over. Mercy General Hospital issued a formal apology to Christopher, offered him $180,000 in compensation. Christopher took $50,000, enough to pay off his legal fees and 3 months of bills. He donated the rest to Oak Grove Community Health Initiative. He got a new job at Regional Medical Center across town, lead X-ray technician. $65,000 a year. Better benefits. A supervisor who actually listened when Christopher flagged something unusual on a scan. Rebecca Walsh lost her election in November, 58% to 42%. The headlines had destroyed her credibility. She resigned from the prosecutor's office and moved to private practice, quietly, hoping people would forget. Judge Sterling continued physical therapy with Justice and Ruth Morgan, 3 sessions per week. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday mornings at the courthouse, before proceedings started. After 6 weeks, he could stand for 3 minutes without support. He could walk 12 steps with a walker. His doctor, Dr. Patricia Wilson, couldn't explain why the techniques were working. All she could say was, "Whatever this is, it's working. Keep doing it." Sterling wrote to the state legislature. Assembly Bill 1423, a pilot program with $2.5 million in funding to research traditional healing practices in low-income communities. The bill passed in March. Sterling's appellate court campaign used it as a centerpiece. He won his election with 64% of the vote. Justice Morgan became a local hero in Oak Grove. The video of her healing the judge went viral. 4.2 million views on YouTube, 8.6 million on TikTok. National news picked up the story. She was invited on Good Morning Sacramento and Ellen. The family declined. Ruth said, "My grandbaby doesn't need to be on TV. She needs to be in school, learning, growing up normal." But normal wasn't quite possible anymore. Riverside Community College sent the scholarship letter. Full tuition plus $5,000 per year in stipend, waiting for her when she turned 18. UC Davis Medical School sent a letter too. Early admission pathway. If Justice wanted to study medicine, they had a program designed specifically to honor traditional healing knowledge alongside modern medical training. Ruth Morgan got a job offer too. Riverside Community Health Center wanted her as a community health consultant. Part-time, $25 an hour, teaching nurses and doctors about bone-setting techniques that had been passed down through 4 generations. Ruth said yes, but only on one condition. "I teach what I know. You don't try to turn it into something it's not. And you listen, really listen, because these techniques work not because of magic. They work because somebody took time to understand the body, to respect it, to learn what it needs instead of forcing what we think it should do." She taught 15 nurses and 6 doctors that first year. By the second year, the program expanded to 3 other community health centers across California. Mercy General Hospital's CEO, Raymond Foster, resigned. The board implemented a new policy. Every X-ray would now be reviewed by 2 radiologists. Double-check system. They created a patient advocacy office with a 24-hour hotline. Any patient or employee who saw something wrong could report it directly, confidentially, without fear of retaliation. The hospital donated $100,000 to Oak Grove Community Health Initiative. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. 6 weeks after the courtroom incident, Sterling invited Justice and her family to his house. First time they'd ever been to Riverside Hill. The house was exactly as Justice had imagined. 4,200 square feet, high ceilings, big windows, a garden in the back with rose bushes and a fountain. Sterling met them at the door. He walked 12 steps from the entrance to the living room. No walker, just a cane in his right hand. His gait was uneven, his left leg still weaker than his right, but he was walking. Christopher shook his hand. Ruth hugged him. Justice just smiled. They sat in the living room. Sterling brought out tea and a package wrapped in brown paper. "This is for you," he said to Justice. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, worn at the edges, pages yellowed with time. "Your mother's journal. I found it in the Mercy General Archives. They were going to throw it away. I asked them to send it to me instead." Justice opened it. 230 pages of her mother's handwriting, notes about patients, techniques she'd learned from Ruth, observations about how traditional knowledge and modern medicine could work together instead of fighting each other. The last entry was dated 3 weeks before Maya died. "Justice, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Don't be sad. You have the gift. Use it. Not for fame, not for money. Use it because people hurt. And you can help. That's enough. That's always enough. I love you. Mom." Justice's hands shook as she held the journal. Sterling's voice was gentle. "I spent $340,000 trying to walk again. You did it for free. Why? Because my dad didn't belong in jail. And you didn't belong in that chair. And now, you both get to start over." 6 weeks later, Sterling walked 12 steps without help. Christopher walked out of debt. And Justice walked into a future her mother had dreamed of. Sometimes healing isn't just about bodies. It's about belief. You just heard a story about a 10-year-old girl who changed 2 lives in 45 minutes. But really, it's about something bigger. It's about the knowledge we've forgotten, the hands we've ignored, the voices we've silenced because they didn't come with a degree or a license or institutional approval. How many Justice Morgans are out there right now? How many grandmothers like Ruth with 60 years of wisdom in their hands? How many fathers like Christopher sitting in jail for telling a truth nobody wanted to hear? This story happened in Riverside, but it could be your town, your courtroom, your family. Maya Morgan wrote in her journal 3 weeks before she died, "Use your gift because people hurt, and you can help. That's enough." That's the line that stays with me, not because it's poetic, because it's true. We're all hurting in some way, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes the person who can help isn't the one with the credentials or the expensive education or the corner office. Sometimes it's the person who cares enough to try, the person brave enough to say, "I see you, I hear you, I can help." Justice didn't heal Judge Sterling because she had a medical degree. She healed him because her mother taught her to listen, because her grandmother taught her to feel, because 4 generations of women in her family refused to let knowledge die just because the system didn't value it. If this story made you think differently about healing, about justice, about who gets to be heard and who gets dismissed, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. These stories take time to find. They take effort to tell right. And they matter. Not because they're perfect, not because they solve everything, but because they're real. And because they remind us that impossible things happen every day when we're brave enough to believe in them. Next time, I'll tell you about a homeless veteran who stopped a bank robbery with nothing but a chess move. Same theme, different hero, underestimated people, unexpected skills, and a system that almost missed the truth. Until then, remember one thing. The person nobody's listening to might be the person everyone needs. If this story made you think differently about healing, about justice, about who gets to be heard and who gets dismissed, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. These stories take time to find. They take effort to tell right, and they matter.